Hello everybody, I'm Joanne Haigh. We welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to another episode of Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, CBC Barbados Facebook and YouTube, and of course Q 100.7 FM radio. Now before I start to introduce our special guests, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to the family, friends and colleagues of the late Dennis Johnson. I must say I was very shocked yesterday to hear the news, and we will be speaking about Dennis later on in the show, and may he continue to rest in peace and rise in glory. Today we will have TRISHA TANNIS on our show. She's chairman of the Private Sector Association of Barbados. She is the first female to hold that position of chairman, BPSA. Tannis succeeds Ed Clark, who did not seek re-election. Also on the show today, we have my good friend, the Honorable NEVAL GREENIDGE. NEVAL is now the Consul General of Barbados at Miami, and he's going to give us a view from the other side about the travel protocols and what that looks like from there and what their views are from there to over here. We will also be joined, if time permits, by Mr. Corey Lane and Mr. Vic Fernandes as we remember our dear colleague and friend, Dennis Johnson. Remember, you can participate by calling us on 228-5563, 228-5562, or send us a WhatsApp message to 228-5562, or you can join us on social media, Facebook to be exact, by typing in CBC Barbados, and you can leave your comments there. Now, last Monday we talked about the oximeters. You can call, and we'll start the giveaways today, and of course we will do that on Monday because we have the QEH, but you're going to have to answer a question about today's show and the specific show at hand in order to get one of those oximeters. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with TRISHA TANNIS after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. My first guest is Mrs. TRISHA TANNIS, Chairman of the Private Sector Association of Barbados. Good morning, Mrs. TANNIS.
Hey, good morning, Joanne. Good morning to the entire CBC family.
Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, let me congratulate you on your new position as Chairman of the Private Sector Association, first woman.
Thank you.
So let me put that out there. I just want to know, how does it feel to be the first woman of this organization, of that particular agency?
Well, I'm humbled, certainly, by the confidence that's been invested in me by the board of directors and the broader private sector, by extension. And it's being the first female is not necessarily a strange thing. It is something that occurred in my substantive role as well, as I was also the first female CEO, managing director for the Unicommer Caribbean and Latin America group. That was in 2010. so some 11 years ago. So
Wow.
not entirely an unfamiliar feeling, but still one that is humbling nevertheless.
Well, I'm actually, as a woman, one woman to another, I'm very, very, very proud of you.
Thank you.
But I know that sitting in that chair as chairman at a time like this cannot be easy, will not be easy, as we are faced with the pandemic and all of the challenges in the private sector. We hear people complaining about food prices and cost of living, and we hear people complaining about vaccines and what businesses are putting in place and if they're mandating it. So let's start with the cost of living first. And this is something I'm sure you're familiar with because you also wear another hat at another retail entity, and I believe it is Courts, let's say that, Barbados Limited. You are is it CEO or you're the managing director? Right, at Courts. So you have one hand, you understand it from that side, being the managing director and of course sitting in this chair. What about the cost of living that we, the average person, we're trying to keep up, and we're feeling as if businesses are just keep pushing and pushing and pushing up the prices at a time where we can't afford?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity to, I think, demystify this topic, Joanne. Thanks for going straight for the jugular. Okay, so there are a couple of myths that are in the private public domain. One of which is the fact that retailers and wholesalers and distributors of imports in the island are seeking opportunities, obviously, to increase prices arbitrarily. And of course, we would never, as we would say in Barbadian lingo, swear blind for anybody. But certainly the information that comes to us, and we do have access to the major and more substantive players on the island. The information coming to us in our own investigation certainly does not support that as an ethos. So let me start there. What we're facing, Joanne, is an unmitigated, unprecedented challenge in our global supply chain. Barbados, as you're aware, imports well over 90% of what we consume. It makes us extremely vulnerable to essentially the shocks, the existential external shocks that we're now actualizing. Why it's probably so acute, though, and this is the case, on any given year, on any given day of the year. But why is it so acute? It's so acute, essentially, obviously, because of the issues and the domino effect and the catalytic events that occurred, occasioned by the pandemic last year in 2020. So this story didn't start in 2021. We began to see this impact in 2020, and that is because we had major shutdowns of the global suppliers coming out of the Far East in particular. That's really where a lot of the shock has originated from. And essentially what we're seeing are the ripple effects of those lockdowns wafting through the rest of the globe. And essentially what has happened is that when you have huge factories locking down and huge supply sources, global supply sources locking down, when they reopen, there is such a pent-up demand immediately and simultaneously across the entire planet that containers essentially are in short supply. Even if you can get the containers or the boxes, the shipping, the labor, it is essentially a global supply chain nightmare, and hopefully a once in a lifetime event. So essentially what has been happening is the pent up demand is so overwhelming, from a global perspective, that essentially containers are in short supply, commodities are in short supply. The demand is is overpowering the capacity to supply, basic commodities, raw materials essentially that go into those materials. Those finished goods are also under threat as well. So we essentially have the perfect storm as it relates to goods and the cost of goods to import. The cost of goods is one thing. The freighting essentially has increased, Joanne, from 2,500 US dollars for a container pre-COVID to 20,000 US dollars for a container.
Wow.
In 2021. And when we hear, okay, well, that's stabilizing and that's coming down, let's be clear that we're not talking about a return to 2,500 US. When we talk about stabilizing and coming down, we're talking about settling somewhere between 14,000 to 15,000 US dollars. When you compare that to 2,500, 3,000 US dollars pre-COVID, there is simply no comparison. And of course, that has to land in Barbados. And time would not permit me to go into the efficiencies then of how we port and we contain and we essentially put process out of the port. And I do at that stage though have to give kudos to the Barbados Port Authority, because I think the COVID-19 crisis certainly occasioned a lot of innovation and acceleration of efficiencies on their part. And they have certainly played their role, and customs as well, in trying to fast track goods and have a risk assessment process and to push things out of the port as quickly as possible. But that certainly does not mitigate the fact that we still have a very inefficient port operation, which adds costs, as well on top of the landed cost. And then, of course, we have the overheads that we have to cover as it relates to the cost of doing business in Barbados. And I certainly personally was a proponent of a delay in the impact, for example, of the minimum wage implementation, because we saw these factors coming down the pipeline. And just let me state for the record, the private sector certainly was not against a minimum wage adjustment. We questioned the timing, however, of that adjustment, adding to the overhead cost and in itself making the cost of living even more expensive in some degrees, thus contributing as well to the overall cost of doing business in Barbados at a time that we didn't think we could actually afford to do so. And that was the context within which we actually asked for that decision to be pushed back a little bit, to give the business sector a bit of time to try to recover coming out of the COVID-19 lockdowns, really. So we are consumers ourselves. Let's not forget that. There's no special container coming for the private sector consumption. We are consumers. We do empathize with the public. And let me also put to rest a very commonly held perception as well. And that is that the margins that retailers are exacting from their products are excessive and punitive. And, that is simply not what our research is showing. And when you're seeing 20 and 30% increases in goods, but, independent economists and consultants are only putting the increase in goods over maybe a 5 or 10 year period at 5 or 6%, then you know that there is an absorption of those costs being done by the importers, and the margins that they are operating on are razor thin, considering the context that they have to operate in. So it is something that is very emotive. We understand that, but we also want to put the public's mind at rest that competition is going to keep prices at their very lowest level. But apart from that, the social responsibility of knowing, particularly around a basket of essential goods, that low-income persons cannot afford to pay above a certain level for products that they have to consume to survive. Those are the factors that we're seeing that the importers are also taking into account as well, and are trying to keep the prices as low as they possibly can and still remain in business.
Well, I can tell you that something was circulating. I was trying to find it here on my phone. It may have some audio on it, and I hope it doesn't have too much. 17 and 31. Okay, so it was some milk, powder milk, baby milk. One entity, $17 and change. The other entity, same milk, $31.80. So you have $17.99 at one place and $31.80 at another place.
Mm-hmm.
How? I mean, we can't control prices. We talk about price gouging, and we know that's not supposed to happen. But yet, we know that with free market, etc., you can't exactly tell people how to price their goods. It is up to the consumer to shop around and possibly look for the best prices. But something like that, almost double the cost from one supermarket to another supermarket. But then you're saying that the research isn't showing certain things. but then the consumer is sharing these receipts. They're not
So let me,
fabricated.
sure. So if I were to investigate that discrepancy, there are several questions I would ask. One, are they importing from the same source? Two, is one importer large enough to command a better price than the other importer? Okay. When they pass through, so essentially the price, there may be a price differential. I don't know. I'm just saying these are the questions I would ask if I were to investigate. As they come through the port, they're coming through the same process. But of course, if I have economies of scale, but you don't, then the cost per item, even at that point, is going to increase. Thirdly, what is the overhead landscape between those two entities? Are you walking into a paved car park? Are you parking? Are you seeing well-appointed and well-trained persons, well-fitted in uniforms? Are you shopping in an air-conditioned environment? Essentially, is that person now paying a minimum wage, or did they have to go through a 40 or 20% increase in their labor over the last 4 or 6 months? What is their electricity bill? Are they using photovoltaic? In other words, what is the overhead profile of one versus the other? At the very end, then, after we've exhausted all of that, then comes the profit margin. Now, typically, when you see these things circulating, there is a propensity to jump to the end and basically assume that somebody is profiteering or price gouging. But there are 5 or 6 questions that we have to exhaust first before we get to the point where the person is able to cover their overheads, whether they're doing so efficiently or not. And then we basically see what they're making over and above all the costs that they have to cover. Then and only then, Joyanne, will we be able to opine fairly on the issue as to whether or not one price is reasonable or the other. So I really can't comment on that unless I actually get all of the above questions answered. And then we come down to the profit margin. And if all things are equal between those two, then I would certainly have questions at the end in terms of why somebody could survive on $17 and somebody else has to charge 31. But there's so much information that we would need before we get to that.
Well, there are people who say, well, don't shop there. And that's easy for people to say, but if you live in an area and you catch
Yes.
bus, and there's your supermarket or the village shop that you can get to, and bus fare has
Sure.
gone up, you can't exactly ask people, especially those who don't have transportation, to go and
Yeah.
buy milk from here, go and get corn from here. I mean, that happens when you have a car, and even now you have a car, gas has gone up. So
Yes.
you really don't want to leave St. Lucie to go into St. Michael to get something because it's cheaper, and then find something that you need additional in St. Philip. You might as well just stay in to St. Lucie. You see, I'm a little
Yeah.
confused. I'm not an economist, but I would like to think I'm some sort of level of humanitarian, and I would think that there's some level of humanity in business, and in a time that there's a pandemic, shipping and freighting, you mean people are just trying to get rich? I mean, I understand you talk about the inputs and the overheads and everything, but realistically, from 2,500 US to 20,000 US, how do you justify that in an environment that people are losing their jobs, people are getting sick, people are dying, world leaders don't have a say, the G20, the World Bank, nobody has a say. I mean, forgive me, I don't know, so that's why I'm asking. People
No,
don't.
you're hitting the nail on the head, Joyanne. In my previous role as a president of the chamber last year, as soon as the crisis hit, it was apparent that we had some geopolitical issues that we had to attend to. What was unfortunate, though, speaking to your question, is that the major global deep sea lines appear, and I will say quite openly, to be a law unto themselves. Okay, we essentially had to bend over backwards in several different ways to try to bring as much lobbying pressure to bear on those lines, and we still didn't meet with total success. To their credit, the short sea lines out of Florida and Miami, they jumped on board very quickly, particularly, and I have to say, because of the posture that the Barbados government took as it relates to absorbing port charges. Okay, the Barbados government has consistently, and the Barbados Port Inc. has consistently risen to the occasion, and in most cases proactively, to waive the port charges where there were cases of lockdowns, or with the implementation of Asakuda World, or various other other challenges and shocks that they knew that, or they did not want to be contributing to a value chain input or increase beyond what was reasonable. And because of the posture of the Barbados Port Inc., and by extension the Barbados government, we were able to get the Florida-based, Miami-based what we call short sea lines on board, waiving certain charges very, very quickly. And we really appreciated that. The long-haul carriers, though, are always the most difficult to deal with. And it is something, it's a conversation that I cannot conclude on, Joyanne, because it is something that, yes, it does need to be taken up as maybe even a humanitarian, and I like your word, a humanitarian cause globally, because these freight costs essentially are filtering into the supermarket and shop floors for people who can scarce afford it. So and perhaps you've hit the nail on the head, and perhaps this needs to be approached from a humanitarian perspective.
All right, we'll be back after the break, and we'll talk vaccines in the private sector. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're speaking with Mrs. TRISHA TANNIS, Chairman of the Private Sector Association of Barbados. We just talked about the cost of living a little bit. God knows that requires probably a longer segment for sure. But I want to move on to this whole thing with vaccines and employers versus employees. The association, what are the association's thoughts or position on vaccination and the workplace? Mandating it, I should say.
So I'm going to try to just retwist the characterization of employee versus employee, because I think that in itself is an interesting tangent that I think that I'd like to explore, even as I address the comment. Let me answer the question by sharing what's happening right now across the length and breadth of Barbados in the business community. And not just business community, but as I'm speaking on behalf of the business community, let me answer for them. There is very little reliability of employment, consistency on a daily basis. And I'm not being dramatic. You would appreciate that if we have over 6,000 persons in home isolation, and others in government instituted isolation, that is 3 or 4 times that essentially that around them that essentially are probably affected. And therefore there is, with alarming frequency on a daily basis, cases essentially coming into workplaces. That is an issue clearly for the business management. But one of the issues that has not yet been ventilated in any of our discourse is how it actually impacts on employees. Before our eyes, we're seeing you're coming to work, you're getting a call that says so and so has been confirmed positive, and we now need to go and contact trace around that individual. So, 3 or 4 on average persons, in addition to the primary case, disappear from the work environment. You, depending on how big that context is to the unit, the division, the business closes not because they're rushing to close, but because they have to for maybe a 7 week period, a 7 day period, or maybe a 14 day period. And therefore, there's no reliability of your business operation, or very little. There is such disruption, it is untenable. But let me highlight, and then go back to the first comment that I made when you asked the question, because no one is actually considering the impact on the employee themselves. So you can imagine that you're coming to work, and then all of a sudden your supervisor comes and they tell you, grab your bags, you have to head to the nearest polyclinic because X person or Y person within your location, is positive. And because and depending on if you're primary or secondary, you have to go, and not just go. You have to take one test. You have to then retest in 5 days. Test results coming back and so on. That's a week or so you're out of the business. And therefore, it is not just disruptive for businesses, it is also disruptive for employees, particularly employees on the front line, which we are observing, unfortunately, are still mainly, or the majority of which are still unvaccinated. Right? And therefore, the likelihood of spread within the frontline areas and spaces of the business communities across Barbados is extremely vulnerable right now. And it's against that background that the BPSA, they made no bones about it, I mean, 2 or 3 months ago, we're asking for a vaccine mandate. And if not a national mandate, by the very least, a frontline mandate. And not just in the private sector either. We think that all frontline employees across the nation are at risk, and therefore we need to look at essentially either a vaccination mandate with two exclusions. And we wholeheartedly support persons' rights not to be vaccinated, and particularly those that have genuine medical conditions and genuine social objectionable or conscionable issues as far as the religious basis is concerned, and that is fine. But having done so, then we do need to still to work to protect the work environment from persons that science is telling us are 10 times more likely to spread the current variant Delta in the work environment. And therefore, that is our position. We do need, and we welcome, therefore, the Safety Zone initiative. We do think, though, that we need to have a proper definition of essential worker, just like we did in the vaccine rollout. The government was very progressive, and when it rolled vaccinations out, it did not limit frontline essential employee only to essential national workers such as policemen, defense force, nurses, and doctors, and so on. They actually very progressively offered the vaccination to frontline private sector employees as well, cashiers and salesperson, front of salespersons on the sales floor, and so on. We thought it was very progressive, and we're simply asking for the same consideration now as we even contemplate safety zones, which we do embrace as a step in the right direction.
Well, I want to thank you so much because we are actually running out of time. We know probably less than a minute. But we would love to invite you back to continue the discussion because it's important. You are part of the social partnership. And again, I want to congratulate you. As you said, it's not the first time you're sitting in a chair as a woman, but in this particular seat, it's very important and extra, probably more so now because of what's happening. I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that you're there. So no, I'm being honest with you. I believe that you can do and bring a lot to the table, and especially when we're dealing with a lot of different personalities. I don't know you that well, but the little bit I know about you, you exercise fairly good judgment. And I want to thank you so much for being a guest on our show. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. My privilege to be here.
Thank you,
Take
TRISHA.
care.
We'll be back with Ambassador NEVAL, NEVAL GREENIDGE, my apologies, Consul General of Barbados to Miami, coming up after the break. Back to Face It and Fix It. We may finish a little early today. We are standing by for to join a press conference at around 11:30, but we will bring you this show up until that time. So again, if we have to break and or finish the show early, you know it's because of a very important press conference that will be happening today around 11:30. Now, my next guest is Ambassador NEVAL GREENIDGE, Consul General of Barbados at Miami. To me, he is NEVAL, and I've known him many years when I was living in another side of St. Philip, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I want to welcome him, a big warm welcome and a virtual hug from my good friend Ambassador NEVAL GREENIDGE. Big hug.
Thank you, my dear friend. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, we go back, way back, and I have always respected you and hold you in the same very high regard and admiration. So I want to thank you for having me on your show this morning.
Well, thank you too, NEVAL, for coming. Well, you know, most of this conversation, and we're going to get away from the COVID conversation at some point, but you know, it's still very here, much here, and it's a problem. What's it like that side of your neck of the woods, if you want to share that with us?
Yeah, I sure will. Thank you. But before I do, I want to express my sincerest condolences to the entire fraternity. And I also want to especially offer condolences to Dennis's daughter, Siobhan, whom I have known for practically her entire life. In fact, who connected me with Siobhan when she was a little girl at Miss Carrington with my daughter. So I want to, on behalf of all of us here at the consulate in Miami, offer our condolences to her and the entire family on the passing of Dennis.
Thank you for that, NEVAL, on their behalf. Thank you.
Yeah, let me start also by saying a very good morning to your listeners, a good morning to Barbados. It's not sunny here in Miami today, but from the sunny city of Miami. But one of the main concerns that I am forced to speak about this morning is the fact that Barbadians are having some difficulty when they get back home to Barbados from traveling here in Miami. And as you know, many Barbadians come here practically on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And the problem is now compounded by the fact that these people are doing double visits because of shopping and other things, and trying to get some of the food stuff that they need in Barbados. I mean, what we heard from Trish just now is unbelievable, and I could imagine what the prices are in Barbados and why Barbadians would want to come here so frequently or with such frequency to help to reduce their expenses. And they come here to Miami quite easily. They come in with a rapid test from Barbados. They pass through with no difficulty after clearing the airlines in Barbados. But where the difficulty is coming is when they return to Barbados. And this is exactly what I want to elaborate a little bit about, and what I would want to make a brief suggestion from what I have seen and what when I checked it, I was told that they think this is the way we should go. And so I would want to speak about that this morning.
Good. So let us know what exactly do they encounter when they land here, and then what is a good solution? How can we fix it?
Okay. The first thing I want to say is that Barbadians who are coming into Miami, I will stick to the southeast, whether it is Miami, Texas, the Atlanta, any of the cities down, any of the states down south. When they are, especially here in Miami, there are locations where you can have COVID tests done by the state, by the city. And they should first check out these places even before they leave Barbados. And if they have difficulties, they should contact the consulate to find out exactly where they should get these tests. Because what has been happening is that Barbadians have been going to CVS, for example, or Walgreens, two of the well-known pharmacies here, and doing tests. And when they do the test, they are self-administering these tests. When they get back to Barbados, they're not being accepted because the PCR test that is being accepted is one that should be administered by the medical practitioner, by the medical person.
A recognized one.
A recognized one. Yeah. And like I said, the state has, like for example, there's a huge one at the Amelia Earhart Park. And then there's a secondary one around the corner. And you can go to Amelia Earhart Park and spend probably 45 minutes to an hour, in most cases if you go in the morning. Or you can go to the secondary one around the corner and literally get it done within 5 to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. The other thing that many of them are experiencing is that some of them, they don't have the package from Barbados where they can access Wi-Fi when they are here. And when they go, they must have Wi-Fi because there is a barcode which must be used in order for you to register for them to give you the test.
Okay, let's backtrack. Let's backtrack here so that our viewers and listeners, sure. Coming to America, I'm planning my trip. Do I have to be, because for what I understand, it's a must now in the United States, so you must be vaccinated. You must be vaccinated in order to get into Miami. Well, in order to get into America, I should say, you must be vaccinated. Is this accurate?
Yes, you must be from the 8th. In another couple of days, you must be vaccinated, and then you must have your valid tests. They accept rapid tests here when you arrive. So you can have a rapid test in Barbados and come into Miami. How soon
before a rapid test is required? How many hours before travel?
The 3 days.
For rapid or PCR?
For the rapid test, yeah. The rapid and the PCR. If you come with a PCR, I'm sure it's accepted because that's the more complete test. But the one that they accept here as well, which isn't accepted in Barbados, and this is where some of the difficulties are coming. They seem to think that when they come into the U.S. on a rapid test, that it is fine to go back to Barbados on the same rapid test here or the self-administered PCR. And that's where the problem is coming.
Okay, so let's go over by the 8th of November. You are required to be vaccinated in order to enter the United States of America. Not only Barbados, anywhere in the world. But you still must, you're still going to be tested upon arrival even though you're vaccinated in America?
No, you must get that test in order to board the aircraft in Barbados.
Okay, but for coming to America now, I'm vaccinated. It's the 8th of November. I have to show proof of my vaccination, of course, to the customs officials.
Airline, yes.
To the airline first. Then when I land in Miami, I must show proof of vaccination. But there's no testing then for me after I land and clear once I show proof.
Absolutely. No testing. You just come right through.
Right. Okay. And this proof that I have, is it a blue card or does it have to be the electronic one that they're supposed to be giving people in Barbados? Everybody doesn't have theirs as yet, but.
Well, that is one of the things you must get before you come, because from the 8th you have to produce it when you arrive. I'm not sure. I don't know if the airlines are going to check for that as well in Barbados, because I know they check for the test that you must do before you are allowed to board the aircraft. And it's the same thing from here in Miami coming back to Barbados, where you must be tested before. And like I made the point earlier, this is one of the sticking points that we need to develop and get Barbadians to understand when they're coming back to Barbados what must be done.
So why do you think or I don't know if you had the conversation, they don't accept the tests that other people accept? Because I would imagine other countries, is that acceptable to go to Walmart and do it yourself? Is it only Barbados that may be rejecting those tests? I mean, it's a little difficult, I guess, to accept because you have to swab yourself and there's a possibility that you may not do it properly.
Yeah.
That's
well, I think that is the main issue. Mm-hmm. And I know for sure that there are one or two other countries in the Caribbean that are also requesting the PCR test, and it must not be the one that you self-administer. But I think what should happen from the Barbados end is, and this can be alleviated, some of the issues that we have encountered and we've experienced, some of those issues can be avoided if the software, the BIM app, is a little bit more user friendly, as well as a few more features I think that are needed to make this app a more secured, a more user-friendly, as well as a more complete app that would avoid some of the issues that we're now experiencing here as people travel back to Barbados.
So what happens when they actually get here? They didn't know, but they walk into, they get on the aircraft. They can get on the aircraft leaving Miami with this pharmacy test, call it that. But when they get off the aircraft, it's difficulty getting in past customs, immigration with that test, or is it the airline as well? I need some clarity there.
They will get, some of them will get on the airline because the airline it all depends on who the airline rep is at the time that looks at the form on the individual phone, or even if they have a physical, a hard copy. But I think where this can be avoided, or it can be nipped in the bud, is where Barbados, the person's responsible for the app, if they have a feature on the app, when you upload the information both for your entry into Barbados as well as the PCR.
Give us the name of the app
results.
Again. Give us the name of the app again.
I think it's BIMFly, or BIMSafe. It is BIM, yeah. Or VeriFly. One of those apps that they use, whichever one. There are I think there are two apps. But the experts, you can probably interview the experts on this after and see how they can rectify the situation, because the rectifying of this situation depends a lot on the persons in Barbados who are directly involved in writing that software.
So,
because, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, because people are having too many different. I've had a recent experience where a mother and a daughter called me, and the mother could not. They were at different locations, and they had to wait until they got to the airport because the daughter was a little more tech savvy to get that information into the system. So somewhere along the line, it seems a little bit, I haven't used it myself. I should have, but I haven't used it. But I've had too many complaints, and that's one of the things that prompted me, because I have one or two suggestions that I think should help fix that issue.
Okay, because I also want to look at the protocols that are now in place. I don't think they've been changed. People coming with, once they're vaccinated, then there's no requirement for a test here. Once there's proof of testing prior to flight, I think it's 3 days, coming into Barbados, anyone. And then when you clear customs immigration, once you have that test done before and you are vaccinated, then you are free to go. You are aware of that protocol coming in. What are your thoughts on it? Because before you answer, because we can probably go into a break and let you answer, I have a major issue of all of these different protocols to fight a pandemic pandemic meaning obviously it's global, and you are moving people, but yet you have rules in different countries, and you expect this to disappear. So you can't have a pandemic and Barbados has one set of rules, the United States has another set of rules, England has another set of rules, but yet you're moving people on an aircraft to be greeted with a different set of rules, to come back here to something different. You are spreading the virus even more. If you understand what I'm saying, it's a pandemic, one set of rules. It's kind of similar to the Paris Agreement. Everybody got together and signed that we're going to lower carbon emissions by 2030, carbon neutral by 2050. These are the things that we have to do. No one got together to say, okay, you know what, this is impacting the whole world. Let's sit down together as leaders, the airline industry, the World Bank, because it's hitting the economy, and fight this as one village for about a month. But we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back and talk about the protocols coming in to Barbados now and our rules when we come back.
Thank you.
If you're now joining us, we are speaking with Ambassador NEVAL GREENIDGE. He is Consul General of Barbados at Miami, and before the break, we were talking about the protocols coming into Barbados as it relates to COVID-19. So, Ambassador, tell me about, give me your thoughts about our protocols, because we had some pushback from people in hotel sector and just regular people who believe that vaccinated people coming in should still be tested at least once within 24 hours.
Well, that I think is a matter that the medical experts should focus on. I think we've had extremely good results from the work done by the medical team in Barbados. I know for sure that Barbados needs to get open because people out here, we are working every day trying to get people down to Barbados, to keep people employed and to get people back to work. And so I think that you just can't have these restrictions all the time. I think what needs to be done is that Barbadians need to follow the protocols, stay covered, which I find that they are not doing as they should. Maintaining a distance is kind of difficult. I know when the pandemic first started, and everybody was scared, it was easier to do that. Only last night I went to a reception where we are launching the Brickell Wine Food and Wine Festival here with a big event for Barbados on the 20th. And I was scared. My my mask fell off there. So that I don't want to say too much about the guidelines that have been set by Barbados. I think that they can work for us if we follow the protocols.
Okay, so you're not getting any feedback from Barbadians living in Miami saying anything to you about them at this stage?
No, they were very, what I can say is that Barbadians were very happy when government decided to remove the quarantine. I'm sure if you get some stats from the airlines or from the immigration for the last couple of weeks since government removed that restriction, I'm sure you would have seen some movement upwards in activity. Up to yesterday, I can tell you that the American Airlines that left here went down to Barbados full. People were a little bit reluctant, and this is why it is very important to avoid them having to be confined. I want to use that word instead of quarantine right now, because we have abandoned the quarantining in Barbados. But I think unnecessary confinement when they get home. And this is what is happening when the app that they're using to come into Barbados to upload the information does not give them any feedback when they put in the incorrect information on the PCR results that they have from the self-administered test. And this is what I think, how I think we can best fix it, is by having some sort of notification back to the persons that your PCR test is going to be unacceptable on arriving in Barbados. And that result should come back within 24 to 48 hours after the person has registered on the application to fly into Barbados. If that is done, the person will know that they have to take immediate action to go and get a PCR test now that is going to be administered by the medical people that would allow them to come into Barbados, and they will know that they have to go to an institution where they're going to get the results back on time to fly tomorrow or the following day. And I think this feature on the application is very, very essential. It will avoid people having to come into Barbados, being told on arrival by the medical team there that they have brought in the wrong test and that they have to be retested in Barbados again, and then they have to go into confinement. Now quarantining for me now, because like I said, we have put away quarantining. And to me this is confining now to ensure that a test is done a second time within another couple of days, or how many other days that the medical practitioners in Barbados, the chief medical officer and his team think that will give them the results to ensure that you're not carrying the virus when you arrive there. So you have to still go into that confinement if you leave here with the wrong test. And I can use a quick classic example for you where I had a guy just 2 weeks ago. He did a test at the CVS. He didn't get the results the evening before he was supposed to travel, and he called me and said, "NEVAL, I'm in a quandary." His dad called me from Barbados first and said that he had a difficulty because he's traveling in the morning early and he hadn't received the results. I said, the only thing to do is to let me have you do a test. I'll have somebody pick you up, take you to the airport immediately and do a test, because he was near to the airport where you can get the results back within 4 to 6 hours. Do not wait until tomorrow to do the test. Do it tonight so that at least you're sure you will get the results. He called me the morning early when he was about to travel, and he said he got both results back. Both results back. I said, fine, well, at least you should be able to get home. Do you know, by the time he landed in Barbados, he didn't even know the difference. And he gave them the PCR test from CVS, which he thought which he thought was an accepted and legitimate one because of the reputation of CVS. And when they saw that in Barbados, they told him, no way you can come through with that. We will have to do a PCR test now, and then you will have to wait for a couple of days, and then we test you again, and then you can go. And he called me again now, all agitated. I said, did you show them the one from the airport? He said, no, but I thought the CVS one would work. I said, well, show them the one from the airport and see what happens. That was the one that was administered by the medical team in the airport. And do you know that the minute he showed them that was accepted,
it changed
and
everything.
so then there was no need for him to do the 2 tests, one the day on arrival and one a couple of days after, because he had the correct test. But had he not called me on that evening about the results from the CVS, had he received those results, he would have had to go home with an unexpected expense of 2 or 3 days in a hotel awaiting the results.
Sounds like Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. needs to add that information and put it out there a little bit more, and I'm making an appeal to them now, because Ambassador is asking, and we're hoping that we can get that fixed. We have a question here. Can I use the blue vaccination card if I do not have the vaccination certificate when they're traveling to Miami?
Well, like I said, that is I would have to check that out to see what exactly they will accept here, and I can easily send it back to you so that you can inform the persons on your next program. I will check with protocol here as to exactly what they will accept from the 8th, because I'm not sure whether they will accept if you must have the certificate or if that will suffice.
And the other question, can I print the vaccination certificate that was sent by email, or do I just have to show them on the phone, the actual certificate?
No, you can print it. You can use a hard copy, and you can also use it on the phone. What I normally advise people to do is to screenshot it when you receive it, so that you know exactly where that is there, and you don't have to have internet when you get to the airport, because again, the internet service at most of these airports.
Heard there was asking questions about AstraZeneca, but I know people who had AstraZeneca had no problem getting into the U.S. Is Sinopharm accepted?
I haven't had any information. I know for sure that there was a lot of discussion here about the Sinopharm. I know there was also discussion about AstraZeneca, because that was not the one that was administered here in any huge way. Again, I will have protocol inform me as to these two, and I can easily shoot you an email so that you can update your listeners on both of them as soon as I get the information back.
Well, I also think it's very important for listeners and viewers to note the U.S. I thought it was November 1st, but you're saying it's November 8th, that you cannot enter the United States of America without a vaccine. Not even a test. You have to have your vaccine, and you're going to get back to me regarding what types of vaccines that are accepted, if they're not, or I would like to think it's AstraZeneca is on the list. I have AstraZeneca, so many thousands of Barbadians. But I do know people for a fact that have traveled on an AstraZeneca and to the United States so far.
Had no problems.
If that changes come November 8th, we don't know. But I want to ask you before we go, because we got a couple minutes left, the diaspora and the work that you do, I see you put it up a lot of things and packaging and trying to get in your rain, trying to get shipments over to Barbados to help us over here. I want to thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit more about that and the support you get from Barbadians living overseas, living in Miami.
Oh, I could never ever thank the Barbadian diaspora here enough. In fact, only this morning I had a call from a very prominent physician here who I knew from way back in Barbados, and he is a very successful physician here, and he called me this morning, and apart from inviting me to dinner tomorrow evening, he said to me, I just want to give back to Barbados. And I said to him, I had a conversation with my Minister of Education this morning, and we're going to have a conference call today to decide on how you can best help her, because we need to get our children back to school. And our Ministry of Education is working diligently to ensure that they get them back into school.
You beat me to
the
it,
safest
because
way.
I was going to tell you, I was going to hint to our listeners and viewers outside of Barbados, and we do have many. We do need some laptops for our children as well, who do who do remote learning. We're not looking at the tablets anymore. The laptops now would be the first choice, and I wanted to take this opportunity to, as you were here, and people overseas, and a lot of them do a lot of work. We have nurses here now from the diaspora, came in now to help Barbadians, and so many people overseas send barrels over for their friends. I know people who send things for people they don't even know. There's another friend of mine who works for the UN, Alicia Lovell, a former Commonwealthian. She's always packing something for somebody, and she doesn't know. You know, she lives overseas, she's doing well. And it's important for Barbadians overseas that if they can help, and I know they do, and I want to publicly thank them too, on behalf of all the people that they would have sent barrels for, laptops and tablets and you name it. They've been really, 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 really good. So, but the things that you send down, what we see you packaging and everything, a lot of it was for COVID.
COVID, most of it was for COVID. For St. Lucie especially, I want to say a very special good morning to Dr. Corey Ford, who I communicated, and I like to ensure that all of these things, in fact, at my house now are a number, I think about 200 or 300 sheets from another Barbadian for the beds down there that I will ship out. But I heard you talk about the work that the Commonwealthians do. I sent down 50 laptops that were given last month by the Law School Old Scholars Association. I want to thank them as well. There are so many people, I don't want to start calling names, but the Barbadians out here, believe me, have stepped up. And we have monthly meetings with them, virtual meetings. We're having one again coming up shortly. I think it's on the 11th. And the one thing that I can tell you is that when you I asked for some wheelchairs only last month, and I had about 20 wheelchairs to send down to the hospital within a couple of days. And there are people like Dr. Desmar Walks in Texas. These are all fine people who give a lot to Barbados, and they deserve our gratitude and our thanks. And I want to say that on behalf of the consulate and on behalf of our Prime Minister, who I know has put her heart into this whole exercise. And the thing about it is that apart from the gifts that I send down from the diaspora, I can tell you about the millions of dollars that the Ministry of Health spends right here alone getting COVID stuff into Barbados. It has been extremely expensive to the government. It has affected us. It will affect our economy. And I want Barbadians to recognize that they have a serious role to play in helping us to not only rid ourselves of COVID, but to also get our country up and going again, because we are not a world, we are just a little country, a little dot. And we need the support of every Barbadian, whether you're brown, blue, black, pink, or white, or whether you're D, F, or G. And let us say that we have to put our country first. And unless we do that, open up to the world, let's get back to welcoming as we are used to welcoming the people from around the world to help us rebuild our country. We need it. And that's my heartfelt plea for all Barbadians, whether at home or in the diaspora. And I can tell you that we have really goodwill from the Americans, especially here in Florida, wherever you go, and they hear that I'm from Barbados. They all want to do something to help Barbados and love Barbados. And we need to love our country and do what it takes to make sure that we become the Barbados again that we have always known.
I think that's an excellent note to end on. I also want to take the opportunity to shout out to Mackie Holder, Consul General to New York, as well, your colleague who we will be inviting on to this show. Mackie, stand by because we'll be calling you. And I want to thank you so much, NEVAL GREENIDGE, Consul General to at Miami. I call him NEVAL. I know him as NEVAL. He knows I mean him no disrespect when I say that.
Not at all.
But he is Ambassador NEVAL GREENIDGE, Consul General of Barbados at Miami. NEVAL, I'm looking forward to maybe paying a visit. I haven't been out of this country since 2012. Last time I traveled was Miami.
All right, I look forward to welcoming you.
A trip. Thank you.
I look forward to welcoming you as soon as you're ready. Yeah.
Thank you.
It would be a pleasure to see you again as well, my friend. Thank you
so
again,
much.
and God bless our beautiful country.
Thank you, and God bless you too. Thank you.
Thank
We'll be
you.
back after the break, and we're going to talk about our colleague, former friend, former colleague, Dennis Johnson, when we come back. Back to Face It and Fix It. I'm checking in with my producer from time to time, and that we may have to finish early around 11:30. Producer, can you kindly confirm if the press conference is still on? But we are waiting for CBC to join a press conference at 11:30, and if the producer can whisper in my ear that we will be going to that press conference at 11:30, I would greatly appreciate it. However, we said at this segment, we're going to spend some minutes, a few minutes on speaking about Dennis Johnson. Unfortunately left us too soon. Yesterday I joined the Brass Tacks family. I used to be on Brass Tacks, and I spoke to Peter Wickham, and we were talking about Dennis, and yes, I choked up. I tried my best not to do it here because it was a shocker. And hearing when someone dies and you know them is never easy. And knowing that only recently Dennis did a voice note, a recording for an avid listener of Brass Tacks who had passed away. Dennis did this recording, and part of it was talking about death, and he said he firmly believes that if you remember people in your hearts and in your minds, then you will never die. And that was his last voice note to me. I played it, and I played it, and played it again and again and again yesterday. And truth be told, I didn't get a lot done yesterday, and I was kind of stuck wondering about this thing we call life and how short it is. And to remind you, regardless of whatever age you are, no one knows the hour, the date, or the time, and you should live your best life, and you should do good for others. As for me, my mantra, I would say that at 51, I'm going to be 52 in December, God willing, that I have spent, the time I have left on earth is no less than the time I have spent. So what I do from here on is so important for me. And I share that with you because I think you need to look at life, or you should consider looking at life like that. A lot of people around us are dying, and from COVID, from other things, because there are other things probably more people are dying from than COVID. And every day you're just seeing this RIP, RIP, R dot, I dot P, rest in peace. and it seems to become the norm. Now, I know that death has to happen, and it does. But if we could do the things to reduce, or should I say to buy some time, put it that way. Because doctors don't really save your life. They extend it. They heal whatever it is that you're ailing from until the next thing comes. Because at some point you will expire. And hearing the news, even if you know some person is ill, is never ever easy. So we are waiting to join one or two people who will be speaking to us. Hopefully, if we can get them online before we join the press conference. But we want to talk not only about Dennis, but about the importance of life and the value of life. And if we are really treating it like if it's important, it's almost like you see it on Facebook and you say something and then that's it, you go on to the next. And no one's taking the moment anymore. A lot of people aren't. Taking a deep breath, doing kind things, spending some moments maybe with your family and sharing kind words. A lot of people are taking to social media and spending a lot of time on a computer and spreading a lot of bad things, doing a lot of damage, spreading a lot of fake news, even about people who have died, no respect for the dead. And then we see all of that happening in a society that seems to be just decaying and coming apart at the seams. I call it being unhinged, honestly. And it's really, really shocking. A friend of mine, a Jehovah's Witness friend of mine, Tina Wallen, said to me, of course, she's Jehovah's Witness, and she said, these are the last days. I don't know. But we are behaving as if they're the last days. And I don't want to get all biblical on people, but don't you think that knowing that we don't have all of this time, that what we do right here, right now should matter? So when Dennis passed away and I heard that news, I was crying not only because he's gone, I was crying really for our country. I was crying because of how the world is. I was crying because I think people have forgotten humanity in a way that we were raised to be. We were raised to share and be kind to one another. But yet as adults, we teach our children to do that. But as adults, we do something totally different and we set bad examples for our children. And then we expect them to grow up to be even better. So these are some of the things that crossed my mind yesterday when I heard Dennis pass, because these are some of the topics that he would talk about. And one of the things he was passionate about, he was very passionate about persons with disabilities. He was an advocate for, because he considered himself too in that category as being disabled, having his illness and having to be home a lot and ailing and then feeling better and then feeling bad again. He'd always have time for persons with disabilities, and he'd always be an advocate, and it would make him really upset if someone was not fair to a person with a disability. So to Dennis, wherever you are, and I would like to think that you're in a really good place, because I do believe in life after death. And if there was no life after death, then this is a pretty messed up game. So I would definitely believe that he is in a much better place. Now, we're gonna go now to a little video to Dennis playing the guitar and singing. And when you hear this, because I was pretty shocked when I heard it, I didn't know the man could sing. So Dennis was actually, apart from many other things, wearing so many hats, he could also sing. And an appropriate song too, because Christmas is coming up. We'll look at him right now, Dennis, and try not to cry.
Long time ago in Bethlehem, so the Holy Bible say, Mary's boy child, Jesus Christ, was born on Christmas Day. While shepherds watch their flock by night and see a bright new shining star, and hear a choir sing, the music seemed to come from afar. Hark now, hear the angels sing, listen what they say, that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day. Now Joseph Joseph and his wife Mary came to Bethlehem that night. Their final place to born she child, not a single room was in sight. By and by they find a little nook in the stable all forlorn, and in the manger cold and dark Mary's little boy was born. Hark now, hear the angels sing, listen what they say, that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day. Trumpets sound and angels sing, listen what they say, that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day.
Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. In this last segment, we will be remembering our former friend, colleague, Dennis Johnson, and to help us remember him in the way that most of us who worked with him can remember him. Corey Lane is here with us. Hi, Corey.
Hi, good morning, Joy.
Well, boy, all I can tell you is we hear talking, and this is not really the ideal, interview or discussion that we would want to have at any point in time for anybody that we know. But we're here. So Corey is also a former moderator on Brass Tacks. He was with the team only up to recently where he left, but he was there many years, a lot longer than I've been. And I joined him in 2019, but I first met Dennis in the 90s when I joined Starcom Network first and as a sales rep, and then I was an assistant marketing officer. Then I left and I came back as promotion manager, and I worked with Dennis again back in 2019 as part of the Brass Tacks team. Corey, are you back with us? Because I think he just dropped out there. We're just waiting for him to come back online. And Corey will be sharing some of his memories of Dennis. I can tell you that we didn't always agree. I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, Dennis was perfect. He wasn't. But he was damn good at what he did. And like everybody else, he made a few little mistakes, but he was a perfectionist. And I could remember sitting in Brass Tacks, and if I pronounced something wrong, or I give it a wrong name, the commissioner of something, he would fling his hands up and wait for the break and then come in. And I said, this is what it is. We have Corey back. Corey, Thanks again for joining us and remembering our former colleague, friend, Dennis Johnson. I heard you a little bit yesterday. I think the public heard me a little bit yesterday. I don't think they understood anything I said.
I understood a bit. Just so we put it just now in context, as soon as you started the interview, I heard you talking just moments ago about the end of the world, and it's so funny because as soon as this interview started, I heard a loud explosion, and I had to switch over to do the interview on my phone because now my Wi-Fi, my electricity is off completely now. So 2021 continues to be that type of year, you know. As you reflected yesterday, and I reflected as well, I would like to reflect on the same. And there's a lot coming up for me, Joanne, where this is concerned. In life in general, it just shows how much.
All right, you stick there a little bit, so we hopefully will get him back. Unfortunately, maybe we should turn our attention to maybe latent power. I'm not sure where Corey lives, but there was a loud explosion a couple of minutes ago, I believe knocking out the electricity where Corey is, and if we get him back, we'll find his location and maybe BLP. Okay, he's back with us. Good. Welcome to Live TV. These things happen. Corey?
Well, right now it's switched back over to the UPS, so I gotta speak until this battery holds.
Okay.
So I'll just get right to it. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's face it.
Let's get down to whatever you want. Go ahead.
Right. Basically, I just want to send my condolences to the Johnson family on behalf of my family, of course, and really to express to those listening that this is the frailty of life. Make the best of every moment. I first met Dennis on this very station many years ago when I was actually in secondary school. I was Prime Minister of Youth Parliament. I had a Good Morning Barbados interview. And during the breaks, he really started to lean over to me and give me a lot of encouragement. And from that day until last Saturday, he continued to give me that encouragement, that mentorship, that guidance, lending his experience and wisdom like none other. So it really hit me very hard. I remember my last message with him. I told him I needed to speak to him about some big decisions I need to make and some things that were bothering me. And his last message to me, don't worry, son, I'll always be here. You know, he could always message me back. But that was not to be. I think that's one of the daunting things for me. But right now, yesterday was really hard. Today I'm trying more to hold on to the positive things, the memories, the music that he played, his expertise in the outside broadcast, as I said yesterday, that ability to take a listener and give them a picture like they're watching a television. You know, the parades, the ceremonies, that he was so well known for. Those are the things I'm trying to hold on to today, Joanne.
And I'm with you with that. Yesterday, I can say that I am probably ashamed to say I probably didn't even get in the shower till after midday. I was still in my night clothes. I sat outside in my patio until my behind went numb. I know, thank God, Sky, my caregiver there for my daughter, Sky, was there. I didn't go inside to talk to my daughter. I didn't do anything except maybe do the brass tacks, which I really thought in the beginning I was going to be okay. But you remember, like, when you're going on air, especially when we first started out, your heart just beating so fast. And my heart just like was about to jump out of my chest when, you hear the beep and you're the caller now and you're the other line. And my heart was felt like and I just broke down. It was just like, I didn't.
It was an off and on for me, listening to you guys and waiting. It was okay at points. At certain points, a person sharing the memory, it became very difficult. And all it was saying is, I hope when it comes to me, I'm in that part where I'm good and I'm settled. And then, as you said, they call your name, it's your turn, and it's your turn to talk. And you're trying to keep, that total composure. But that should say something about the man, because this year, these last 2 years have been particularly difficult. I've had a lot of loss in my life, but the loss 2 days ago was different. There was something very different about it. Death doesn't usually do that for me because I try to put life in context in a particular framework. But this particular one hit me particularly hard. I don't know if it's because of everything else that is going on around us, or if it is just the measure of demand. Somebody that is there, that you're accustomed to, that you are prepared to go to see or discuss something with a few days or a few, whatever, in short order just to wake up to hear that that will never be. I don't know if that is what presented the major challenge for us.
Well, I don't know. You know, we're hearing all these deaths from COVID, and people are dying from other things too. People are exhausted. People are depressed. We fight hard, sitting in this chair, trying to do the right thing, bring information, bring the truth, bring help if we can. But, and I don't want to sway away too much for Dennis, but this is to do with Dennis too. Him being able to sit in the chair and bring information and bring his knowledge to people. And then what saddened me is, you know, you and I, we go through this too. You know, you look through Facebook and then there are all these negative things about people and us. And all we're doing is trying to bring the truth and maybe bring our take on it. But I think what's really breaking down society right now is social media, the things that are going out. The things that are allowed to maybe go out on radio and TV sometimes, it's just coming apart at the seams. And I think we need to pull it back and pull it back fast. And Dennis's death just reminded me of, all right, chick, you know, you don't got much time here, you know what I mean? So what are you going to do? And I don't want to be like the negative people. I mean, I can tell you that you're going to feel a little offset every now and again. But will I put that out there on Facebook to share with everybody? No. Do I want to share what I share now? Information and good thoughts with good friends. You remember that thing you did for me, not for me, for the Prostats listener who died. You remember so Dennis did one too, and I put it on social media so people can hear Dennis's last words were about death. And it was so weird that he said it. It was almost prophetic. It was like, this is how he feels about it. And he said he truly believed if you let a person continue to live in your hearts and your minds, then it would mean that they would not die. And that's what he said. And the joke is, I got different things from moderators, but you know, Dennis one had to be longest one. Yours was short and to the point. Dennis probably gave me 2 minutes. I said, Dennis, just give me about 30 seconds, if that much, not long. You know, the people can play it at the funeral. We did it in a nice package. We had the brass tacks theme, and we had Dennis, you, Christina, you know, Peter, everybody paying tribute to this guy. And Dennis one was the longest. I said, trust Dennis. So come and make it a little longer, whatever. Cause you know, Dennis.
He always had a lot to say.
He always had a lot to say. And you remember being caught up in a Dennis story. Now this time you either gotta go to the bathroom or you gotta go home.
Yeah.
But you can't get out.
You can't get out.
You can't get out.
He also speaks with his hands, right? So if he's grabbing somebody in the story, you can be sure that you're going to be grabbed. And I mean really grabbed to the point where you cannot
get away.
You're part of the story physically. So yes, I remember many.
And this finger, and this finger. This finger, but not in a rude way. This finger, and he's telling you, and he hand on your shoulder, and he's like this, and he had on the side too, by the way, and he's like this, and he's talking, and I also remember his cologne, and people may want to know how I know his cologne, but I'll tell you this: before COVID, every time I saw Dennis, cause he got a little bit smaller, me and my big fat self would put my arms around him and give him this biggest, always give me the biggest hug ever. And I will share this with the public. This is before COVID, of course. There is no man that could greet me and kiss me on my lips other than Dennis Johnson. And I mean publicly, we would just like that there. And I was like, well, you're the only man that could do this. He said, I know. You know, so things like that I miss. One of the callers from Brass Tacks spoke to me yesterday. She said she's going to buy his cologne that he used to wear to keep it. But you must have really impacted a lot of people in their lives if someone who didn't see you every day and was a listener, but know what you kind of smell like in his favorite cologne, wants to go and buy his cologne. How many years though, Corey, you were there at Brass Tacks? I can't remember. It was like 10?
I think it's seven going 8 years. Yeah.
7 going 8 years.
I never realized it was so long.
Right, and Dennis was on there because Dennis was at Starcom from the 90s. And then he left and came to CBC, and then he went back. But do you remember the Sundays when you produced Brass Tacks and then walk down the steps and come through the door, put on the headphones, then to be the DJ now, to be, you know, the announcer, dealing with Sunday programs. And he would play some music that I would call and go, man, don't do this to me, man. Dennis, you know that I ain't got a boyfriend, I ain't got a husband, all these love tunes, and he laughing at me now, you know. But he always knew what to play. You remember those Sundays? Because you did a lot of brass tacks.
For sure, I did a majority of Sundays. So I can tell you, he come off here, he's coming down the stairs, we're having a heated debate on something to do with the topic of the day, and he said, yes, yes, and then he slides into the chair and he said, good afternoon, this is Dennis J, and I'm in with you, and you be prepared. Sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and he goes out, that smooth voice, and he throws on something, the most mellow music that you can imagine, and it's smooth sailing on a Sunday from there. The transition was seamless. So yes, I saw that a gazillion times.
Well, I don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting Holly, who was also at Starcom, Vioma Ali, who also passed through Starcom. So I'm hoping that they're all liming together and probably trying to outdo each other when it comes to, because in this business, not in my business, I'm not a journalist or announcer or whatever, I'm just a communication specialist. But these guys, people like Vioma, the late Vioma Ali and Dennis Johnson, these guys aimed for perfection. And there are not very many people left in broadcasting now anymore that could say that, you know, there are no Milton Gibbs out there as much, and Vic Brewster and Vic Fernandes, and I think that we have a long way to go to step into their shoes. And Dennis, who was not trained professionally, who did not go to mass comm school, came off the streets and was I think he was a listener, he was a contributor to Brass Tacks. I think David said that.
And David picked him up. From his contributions.
And then the rest was history. Because he was just, and I think between Ronnie Clark and Dennis Johnson at Starcom, they're the only two I can think of that could fit in anything. Dennis just wore every hat. Dennis could even wear the salesman hat.
Producer, moderator,
newsman, writing ads, voicing the ads. The only other person I could think of that would do that, and was able to do, or is able to do that, is Ronnie Clark. And but Dennis really by far. And then you used to ask yourself if these men have a life, because Ronnie is always being Starcom, 4 o'clock in the morning. Dennis, rest assured.
They open the station and they close it out.
And they close it down. You could rest assured. So I understand that, you know, in his last days, I think for me, I didn't know something was wrong, but when I heard Dennis doing Brass Tacks from home, and you know, all of us might have tried it, but never Dennis. If Dennis was not at work, it means Dennis was very ill and was off completely. But Dennis never did that. And it was the first time, unfortunately, it was his last. But when I heard it, because you know you can always tell when somebody at home doing Brass Tacks, because we can hear the difference between the sound. And I said, that's unusual. Why is he at home? You know, they ain't like Dennis to be at home. And then, you know, some of the things he kept saying about his retirement, and, you know, I guess I feel sad about that, because I think he was looking forward to, I don't know if he was looking forward to retiring, or was he hinting to us? You know, I listened to Thursday's show.
I think he was preparing us, because I don't think Dennis would have retired. I think Dennis would have returned probably on contract and do a number of programs that he wanted to do. Because he told me he wanted to do a men's program, he wanted to do a youth program. So he has some work left in him. He has some juice left in the bottle. So I know that's what it was. I think he would have done the official retirement thing, but he certainly would have returned to continue to do some more great work.
And I think too that there were a lot of opportunities out there. He just never left broadcasting. You know, he could have, if he wanted to. He certainly had the talent to be any communications person, any person at all Dennis wanted to be. Dennis had banking experience. Dennis can tell you about the hotel industry. You know, there were some people who would be like, oh, man, you feel you know it all. But the point is, why he knew it is because he researched a lot and he read a lot. So he was able to share that. How many times, Corey, though, it was a joke. We are talking, and all of a sudden you hear Dennis' voice come in between, because we didn't get it right, or we didn't know the answer. Dennis would go, well, you know, in Grenada, or blah, 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 and he goes on and on and on and go. And we sit there and go like, thank you very much, producer, for doing that. But he would help us out. Realistically,
he would. Sometimes you forget something, he's saying you a note. Sometimes, again, it's just the pronunciation. He'll send you a note. You know, you could always look forward to that back. He never let you fall flat, you know. Always, one of the things he said, you know, he get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and he read the Caribbean newspapers. Anybody that is well read obviously would have a vast, you know, stock of knowledge. And that was the Dennis Johnson. He was very well read and he was knowledgeable on many issues, to the point where some people saw it as a negative. You know, some people say, oh, he know it all and so on. No, it wasn't a know it all, it was know a lot. Definitely a know a lot.
Well, Corrado,
that should not be seen as a negative.
No, I can remember. I know your battery's going to go, so we don't want you to just fade out.
Alert now.
A little down, but I remember when the revenue commissioner was first put in, the female, I can't remember her name, but I was introducing her, and I said the inland, say again?
I think Gail Sivers.
Oh, no, Sivers is gone. This is another lady, no.
Well, the new one after Gail
The new one's
Sivers.
after Sivers. So I said the Inland Revenue Commissioner, and I'm like, I'm thinking, I saying it right. Dennis burst through the door during the break. It's the Revenue Commissioner. I said, oh shoot, sorry, you know. Of course I'm saying, well, I didn't give her the job, you know, so I don't remember the title as a joke. But you know, it was a joke, and he took it in, you know, he took it in a good way. But he would burst through that door during the break, or he would give you some information if you don't know, or he would tell you this is something that he spoke on, and then he would end it, but what do I know? You know, that type of thing. He would, well, what do I know? You know, don't want to ever, and make it, you know, downplay it a little bit. But he had a wealth of knowledge, and you know, I left Brass Tacks in it was in June to come here. And I didn't say goodbye, because I don't say goodbye. I don't even encourage my children to tell me goodbye. When we talk on the phone, especially my daughter in England, we say see you later, and until we speak again. But we got to wrap up here now, Corey, because we do have to join a press conference. I understand, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm going to call you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and rest well, Dennis, and good morning to everyone.
Thanks, Corey. All right, thanks. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. As we said earlier, we will be joining a press conference shortly, and I want to encourage you to tune in on Monday. We will have the Queen Elizabeth Hospital joining us for the full 2 hours, the various departments, Dr. Clyde Cave, and other departments. You can ask your questions, and I know we have the oximeters that we said we're going to give away to you. We're going to start it on Monday because we couldn't do it today, but you will be required to ask a question about the show. So join me on Monday when we come back with the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. and we'll be giving away those oximeters. Be safe. Goodbye. God bless.